Caleb with Brownells here, back with another episode of the Guns of Tarkov. I am here with Jesse Halteman, aka JesseKazam, Twitch streamer and YouTuber for Escape from Tarkov.
Yep, and Escape from Tarkov has kind of made its mark on the video game world as being a game with like the most kind of realistic and immersive ways of firearm handling, manipulating, just how you use it in general, how you can modify it. And that's really kind of what brought me as a gamer into this world, into being interested in this stuff in real life, which is why I'm super excited to be sitting here with you looking at some of these guns.
And we're super excited that you're here. And, you know, we in previous ones, we did some of the rifles, like the SKS, Mosin AK,
Yeah.
and talked about how in-depth they are and how much they can be modded in the game.
Yeah,
And shotguns are no exception.
absolutely.
So here in front of me, I have our U.S. representative here, which is going to be the Remington 870. And then we have our Russian, which is our Saiga 12. So those are some of the two most used shotguns in the game.
Absolutely. I think shotguns in general in Escape from Tarkov aren't used too often, but I think they're really like underrated and underappreciated. Like it's a sobering experience you have all your kit, you have all your gear, your really expensive rifle and armor and everything, and in one or two shots to the legs or to any unarmored area and you're done for. So I'm excited to be looking at these and talking about them. The Saiga is something that, once again, learning about a lot of Russian weapons from this game that is set in Russia, the Saiga is a very quintessential kind of shotgun in Escape from Tarkov, and it's really cool to see it here.
Yeah, and like a big thing that sets it apart, it's obviously you can look at it and see that it is based off of the AK platform.
Yeah.
So if you're trained to run an AK, you can run one of these, no problem.
And magazine fed.
It's magazine fed, so that's a whole nother thing. You don't have to sit there and single load rounds into the tube. You just throw another magazine in and you can keep going.
Which I think we have here one of the 10 rounders. I think the 5 is kind of the stock round. But just seeing that and picking that up in real life, like I don't think people realize how beefy this is to have 10 shotgun shells in a single magazine. And then the game also has the 20 round power mag.
The 20
the
round,
drum.
Yeah, the drum. So not easy to load.
Yeah.
Because in the game you have to load your own magazines. But if you bring extra magazines with you, you can keep the fight going for a while.
And so we've talked about this a little bit when we've done some of our streams and some of our podcasts, but what's the difference as somebody who's new to the gun world in real life and just kind of sees these as numbers on a screen normally? What's the difference between like how they're chambered, the gauge? I think we talked a little bit about how the Russians gauge is a little bit differently, like.
Yeah, so they use different units of measurement.
Okay.
So we say gauge, they'll say like a 12 by like 23 or something like that. And we'll just say 12 gauge. So they're going into the gauge and then they're also accounting for the length of the shell as well.
Gotcha.
And we'll just say like 12 gauge, like 2 3/4 inch because we don't like the metric system for some reason. But no, so going into that, I can take the same round. I can take the Russian 12 gauge and throw it in my 870.
Okay.
I can take my 870 12 gauge, load it into this gun, and be just fine.
Yeah.
So this is a gas operated gun, so different shells are loaded differently because in America we measure our chamber pressures differently.
Okay.
And without getting too in detail to it, you might have to use something that's loaded a little bit hotter to get this gun to cycle.
Okay.
Whereas this will eat anything because it's pump action. You're manually cycling it.
Gotcha.
So that's some two of the big differences there.
So we're talking about the shotguns. It's interesting, in video games you see them a lot as these really close kind of like breachers, and they're not used too often, and you definitely don't see them kind of like tricked out like this. A lot of times you just kind of see a stock shotgun that somebody's using. How like effective are these in real life, and what kind of are they used for?
Yeah, so well, first off, they're extremely effective in real life. This one right here, this 870, this is my personal shotgun.
Wow.
So they're definitely useful enough that companies are still making all the accessories to trick them out, like Magpul, and then I have an aim point on it. And, it's a very effective tool from everything from hunting to room clearing and urban breaching. When I was in Afghanistan, I had a shotgun up with me on the 50 cal. I was a 50 cal gunner doing route clearance. So it was a very useful crowd control type tool.
Yeah.
And you know, when you have a shotgun, just there's something about that.
Yeah.
That meant so. A little bit of an Afghanistan, war story here. I was sitting behind a 50 caliber heavy machine gun, and I could swing that around all day. Nobody cared when we were driving through the towns. When I needed to get people's attention, I just lifted up the shotgun, and people scattered. They were like, okay, this. They weren't scared of a 50 cal machine gun, but if I lifted up my M4 or my shotgun, then I got taken a lot seriously. Yeah, it's more serious. So, and just like going back through the history of the shotgun, all the way back to the blunderbuss being used to clear ship decks.
Yeah.
And it's still a very useful tool today. It gets used in urban breaching quite a bit as well. Law enforcement.
Yeah.
Still use it all the time. You have less lethal options for it as well, as far as shells go, like bean bags and rubber bullets, even flashbang rounds.
Oh, yes, which we can talk about in a second. Some of the flashbang rounds in Tarkov.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting. It's cool to hear that, because from the Tarkov perspective, and the way that armor and ammos and stuff like that work, a lot of times shotguns end up being considered what's called leg meta, where in Tarkov the only place you can't place armor is your legs. And so a lot of people will take a shotgun with some sort of buckshot. Magnum buck is one of the most lethal ones in the game, and go for the legs, and you can absolutely wreck somebody. So it's cool to see how they're, like I said, I feel like they're very undervalued and appreciated in Tarkov, and to see how in real life it's not that way, that they're very much so valued and appreciated. But talking about some of those kind of off rounds, we can't talk about Escape from Tarkov and shotguns and not bring up the KS-23.
The KS-23.
Which I didn't know was a real thing or existed in real life until they put it in that game. But I'm assuming that that's just an older Russian shotgun that was made to, flashbang, there's gas rounds, incapacitate vehicles, and destroy kneecaps all over. Yeah,
so the KS-23 was originally designed as like a prison guard type shotgun. And the barrels they use on that were 20 millimeter anti-aircraft gun barrels that got rejected from inspection.
I think I heard that.
So then they started making shotgun barrels out of them, which is insane. So the KS-23 shoots a massive, uses a massive shotgun shell.
Yeah.
So just to kind of put it into like American standard perspective, we don't have any here because it's a Russian thing. But so this is an American 8 gauge. This thing is huge, okay? I'm going to compare it to your standard 12 gauge buckshot here.
So this one is a 12 gauge that something like this would shoot.
Yep, in my left hand here, that's that. This is an 8 gauge, okay? So the lower you get in the gauge number, the larger the shell gets. It is. So the KS-23 would be something roughly equivalent to a 6, so it'd be even bigger than this one. So it's just massive.
That is absolutely insane. And it's really the comparison, because that, when you, on video, you pick up the 8 gauge and you're like, that just looks like a shell. But sitting that next to a 12 gauge and then saying that the KS-23 shoots a bigger round, that's pretty insane.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. And, no exception to the rule as far as different shell types you can use. KS-23, you have a bunch of different stuff. Your 12 gauge, you got everything from your AP-20s.
Yes.
Which we don't have any here because those are not easy to get. They're way easier to get in Tarkov than they are in real life. You have to have you have to be an approved government agency and go through all the process. And they're not made in America either. And the AP-20 is an armor-piercing shotgun slug. Yeah, that's what it is. So it's made to defeat armor. And then you have, your standard slugs in the game. Yep. You have your buckshots, your Magnum buckshots. So there's a lot of stuff, and you don't have to, just like in real life, you don't have to load all one ammo type in. Yeah. You can mix and match. So you can kind of adjust for what you're planning on doing or the different threats you plan on encountering. Yeah. Which is super cool.
Which it is really cool to see kind of that breadth in the game. Like you've got kind of the whole variation. You've got the 7 millimeter buckshot and stuff like that. You even have something in the middle, flechette, which has a little bit less pellets, but they do a little bit more punch. So you got to make sure you're accurate. The AP-20 slugs on the other end of that, the RIP slugs. I don't know if that's a real thing.
It's a real thing.
But those are pretty devastating. So it's cool to see it represented in how many different, like you were saying, different situations and what you want to use. And then even back to the KS-23, the only non-lethal shotgun round we have in the game at all is the flashbang round, which is in the game absolutely kind of a meme because it's just completely blinds you for a very long time. But it's cool to see kind of more of that stuff. I hope they do more of some of like the non-lethal stuff in game as we get some more of the features, but it's cool to see how wide they went with the shotguns.
Yeah, and they can keep going with it.
Yeah.
That's another thing. We're scratching the surface here because they've scratched the surface in the game. So
Yeah.
There's a lot more to go through. So that is the shotguns, or some of the shotguns. Like I said, we scratched the surface of Escape from Tarkov. So join us in the next video. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you are a Twitch participant, go ahead and follow Jesse on Twitch, JesseKazam, and give him a subscribe on YouTube as well. He does a lot of good stuff there. So
Thank you.
join us in the next Guns of Tarkov.